Hi, I'm Jo de Morton from the Victorian Department of Premier and Cabinet. When I was having a think about this topic and how to approach it, I was wondering why this label of digital strangers and digital natives even mattered, because technological change has been around for a very long time and we've all laughed at older generations who haven't embraced it, and now it's my turn to get laughed at when I haven't embraced it. So my first memory is my dad struggling, couldn't use the television remote control, didn't even want to bother with it. Why would I bother? I've got you kids, you can get up and change the channel for me. And now, it happened to me probably 10 years back with a digital camera, and it was very precious. We bought one for my dad's 60th birthday and it was in the box and we didn't touch it because we might break something. We had to read all the instructions. And when we weren't paying attention, my little niece, who would have been maybe 4 or 5, had picked it up, got the whole thing up and working, and was taking photos of the party. So it's something about, you know, this pace of change. And so when I read the introductory paper for this conference, the line that struck me was the speed of technological change since about the 1990s has escalated markedly. So if you think about the things that we've seen in the generation since we entered the workforce, and I laughed at the older executives who were still using the typing pool and wouldn't use the computer, to, you know, what the new generation coming in is laughing at us about, I think what the difference is the speed at which that's going to happen. And so Darren Whitelaw, who's in the audience here, gave me a great story, and I'm going to steal it blatantly. So if I'm going to muck it up, so ask Darren in the break how I should have told it. But the way that this goes is, in the years since computing has come in, which is 30 odd years, they liken it to a chessboard, and 64 squares on a chessboard. The first half of the chessboard, 32 squares, about the amount of time we've had computing. And so the story goes that the man who invented chess, the emperor, was so pleased. He thought, this is the most brilliant game ever. How can I reward you for inventing this wonderful game of chess? And he was a poor peasant man, and he said, well, I'd like a grain of rice for the first square of the chessboard, and then for every square thereafter, I'd like you to double the grains of rice. So on square 2, I'd have 2, and on square 3, I'd have 4, and on square so on and so on, 8, 16. And so the emperor laughed, thinking, oh, this poor peasant man, he doesn't even know what he's asking for. I've got all the gold and the riches in the world. Anyway, if you do your sums, by the end of the 64th square on the chessboard, there's something like 18 quintillion grains of rice. I didn't even know that was a number till I heard this story, but it's apparently a number. It's followed by, I think, like 19 zeros or something like that. Anyway, that's enough rice to be the size of Mount Everest. And so if you think about the speed at which those grains of rice are doubling on that second half of the chessboard, they're growing from one tiny one to 2 to 4. By the end, you're doubling a Mount Everest. And so Moore's law, the rate at which computing power grows, it doubles every year, or, you know, for the techos out there, I'm not entirely sure, which is why I said you better ask Darren the real story. But if that's what's happening, then where we are today is kind of like halfway through that chessboard. And so the rate at which we've seen technology change has been quite slow, and we've been able to adapt. We've dealt with sitting in, you know, 2-day classes to learn how to use Microsoft Word, to all of a sudden downloading an app and just intuitively trying to work out how to use it. But the rate at which we're going to see things change from today in the next 30 years is going to be exponential. So I think the real difference when we start to think about the generations and the new people coming through the workforce is not so much about what technology are they using, what social media platform. Thank you to Jackie, because you apparently have just proved what all the young cool people are now just saying, is that Facebook is for oldies. They don't even use it anymore, and I thought I was really hip because I'm on Facebook and I can kind of get it to work. So, you know, I think that's the thing that we're actually dealing with. It's not about technology and platforms and digital per se. It's about how are we equipping our workforces to be flexible and be adaptable and be able to learn for themselves and deal with that rate of change. When you apply that back into a work context, some of the things we think about is our products and our services, and what should we offer them on? What platform should we use? Oh, we need another app, we need another something. What will happen is that the product that we're going to be delivering our services on in a few years' time probably hasn't even been invented yet. So this old notion of training and teaching is not the way that our newer generation of workforce is going to have to be able to deal with that changing environment. So the point that I'd kind of want to bring the thinking to is, then what's the business opportunity? So it's not about a particular piece of technology or an IT opportunity. This is now about business strategy. And to think about business strategy, we need to start thinking about who's using our products and services and what their needs are. So the example I've been giving there is when I first started thinking about in my own life the innovations that I'd seen, the one that came to mind was when I got married. And to get married, I needed my birth certificate, which I didn't have. And so I had to apply to get my birth certificate, and I had to go in and stand in the queue, and they gave me one. But I could go in and get it on the same day. And so back then, that was really good service. And to enable the back end of that service, I think what they were doing was they'd used brand new fax technology. So that instead of having to wait for something to get posted from the archive to me, they were getting it out of the archive and they could fax it to the office that I was standing in, and there's my copy of my birth certificate. Great service, super great service. What they hadn't done was thought about what I was going to do with it. And so anyone who remembers that old heat-sensitive fax paper, so I was carrying this thing around in summer when most people usually try and get married, and all of a sudden I went to use it and I pulled it out of my bag, and the thing had gone completely black. It was unusable. You couldn't read a word of it because it just kept kind of heat processing stuff. I don't know much about how fax paper works, but anyway, it was black. So if someone had have thought about that I needed longevity in that document, it was my evidence of identity, then you wouldn't have put it on a piece of paper that didn't have the longevity. So there's something about being thoughtful of how you're choosing the technology to actually meet the needs of the people using your product or service. And so this is where my new role comes in Service Victoria. The interesting thing, the other interesting thing in the ANZSOG paper was a line that said, large bureaucracies are optimised, and it also went on to talk about and resourced, for due diligence and compliance rather than for experimentation. So as I talk about this customer focus, the other challenge we had was, how do you create an environment that can experiment and can innovate outside of the large systems of government and the control frameworks of government departments, and particularly a Premier's department. So we've taken the approach of a lean startup. There's a handful of us getting going. We're using all the new technology. We're a completely paperless office, and I was terrified coming here that I'd kind of pressed the button and my notes would have disappeared, but it worked. Can't print a damn thing, so I'm slowly dealing with that. And we started having a think about who are the customers of government's transactional products and services, and I think I can click. And what we worked out was that our customers are actually coming to government to go on a bit of a journey. They're interacting with government because they have to, because we're regulating something, and they're trying to find information about what the requirements are that are going to let them get on with the rest of their life. So I had to get a birth certificate to prove my identity before I was allowed to register my marriage. And so finding that information, applying it to my personal situation, and then going on and doing something, applying for a permit, getting something registered, these are kind of the same steps for every customer journey. And yet government is trying to solve customer service in our traditional agency and departmental silos. Each silo is thinking about the customer from their perspective rather than from Victorians or Australians as a whole. So what that's led to is that we've made information, as the web's become available, as it's become really cheap to provide information, anyone can just put it on there, and it's been well, we've got it available, we'll just put it there, and good luck to you if you can navigate your way through 538 state government websites and find the one that you want. So what we're trying to do is say, well, if you really thought about the customer's journey through that, you might organise your information in a different and consistent way that makes sense to them, and you might personalise it around their needs. there was a great example of the UK government. It's on their a video on their website, and it said there was a beautiful website done by their department that listed they call them bank holidays, we call them public holidays, listed every public holiday. Hard to see how you could do it, but it was really clear. There they all were, a beautiful table. You could scroll down, read through the table till you found the one you wanted. When they actually asked the customer what they were doing and observed the customer behaviour, what they found was people were usually, the majority of people were looking for the next public holiday. So they redesigned that website to put this great big green screen up that said, the next holiday is tomorrow, yay, have a day off. And then if you want some others, you can then scroll down a bit further. So suddenly thinking about how technology can enable a better customer experience and better service delivery is really the challenge, rather than getting too bogged down in trying to teach our workforces to use technology for technology's sake. And again, same thing in services. We're seeing a great shift towards people's wishes to use online technology if more were available. So you can see there the stats out, the research said 65% would prefer online, yet less than 1% of the Victorian government services are fully end-to-end digital today. So something's going on because the technology is there and our customers are using it, but we haven't adapted to it. So this ability to disrupt the existing business models of government and think about them in a different way is something that I think we really need to spend more time thinking about, rather than so much about how to educate people about the latest technology, because by the time they've learnt it, it'll be obsolete. Thanks.